Hello, welcome back. I know what you're thinking. You're seeing the words system failure. That means that things aren't working right. No, the reason it's system failure today is this is the 13th time, unlucky number 13, that I've run this particular program for Game Master preparation or Dungeon Master preparation, where I talk about learning to improvise, different improvising skills, different tools. And every time I run this, I do it a little bit differently. So again, I'm going to do it a little bit differently, and I'm also going to take us back a little bit to where we were before. So I'm going to put up a poll. I would suggest grab some food, some drink, make sure you're comfortable, and we'll go from there. Hello, Nacho Man. How are you doing? Nice to have you here. Thank you for showing up, or should I say, Wizards and Warp Drives. Okay. So now that you've got your food and your drink ready, you should be ready to go, and I am pretty much ready to go too, which is good, right? Let's get started. Hi, welcome to How to RPG. My name is Fred Weller, and today I want to talk about not so much MacGyver. I want to talk about learning to improvise. Okay? And when I think about improvising, I think about when everything sort of starts to go wrong, or something goes wrong and you really need to sort of pivot. So it's about teaching you those skills to you. As I've said before, I always try to make this program a little bit different every time I watch it, as I try to refine it and make it more useful for you. So this is, as I said, Game Master Preparation, Lesson 6, Learning to Improvise. And for those of you who are wondering, like, what does it really mean? Well, it means really unleashing your ability to improvise in the game without feeling like you're going to explode. So the overview for today is improvising methods, Rory story cubes, plot twist cards, random charts, plot points, no game preparation whatsoever, and then of course in amongst there is going to be a whole bunch of stuff that's really not necessarily covered by the overview. It's sort of like the things in between, the alternative methods, and then what to improvise or what you can improvise, and then some miscellaneous recommendations. So that is the overview. My objectives: explain how to use different types of methods of role-playing game, of improvising in your role-playing games, but I want to demonstrate some of that today as well. I won't demonstrate everything because there's so many, and I want you to practice. I want you to be part of that process as well. So we're going to do that. So the key improvising methods that I want to sort of say I'm going to talk about today, but really I'm just going to highlight them now. And before we sort of get into the nuts and bolts of this, is really around, I guess you might say, the different aspects of how we go about dealing with the process, like what tools are available to you in some way. And those tools that I tend to talk about the most are things like the Rory story cubes or picture covered dice. A really simple concept, picture covered dice. Then there's also plot twist cards, and plot twist cards tend to be hard to find now. You can also get things like flashback cards or plot cards or storytelling cards. They're all pretty much the same sort of thing. There is things like random charts and tables. Now, whether that's digital or on paper or in a book, or automated generators, they're the same sort of stuff. A lot of automated generators nowadays. Plot points. But really, plot points are really just the game master or the dungeon master allowing the world to be shared with the player characters so that the player characters can impact the world and change or be part of building the world in some way. Not necessarily through their characters' actions, but by the suggestions they have for the game master to incorporate. So it could be as simple as naming a village. And then, of course, no game preparation whatsoever. So I'm going to talk about that. But before we go into that, we really need to sort of discuss, I would say really briefly, the key problem that people wind up running into almost every single time I've ever done anything around improvising, this is probably the key issue that people have. And that is, it's just too stressful, okay? And I get it. So I'm going to come back to the slideshow, but I want to just talk like briefly about that problem. Like improvising any kind of game, any tabletop role-playing game can be stressful for most people. I mean, if you are not stressed out by it, great, that's wonderful. But most people are. So you have to prepare for that experience. If you go into it completely cold turkey with no strategies whatsoever, you're going to have some problems. And before you even start playing the game, before you even sit down at the table, there are a number of things you can do. You really need to identify and practice using some strategies that will help you improvise in the game, yes, but you also have to identify and practice using methods for relaxing. I've talked about this before. You have to have a relaxation method to help deal with the nervousness. So whether that's listening to calming music before you start your game session, or having a drink of tea, maybe you have chamomile tea, but a quiet time before the game. Maybe you sit down for 15, 30 minutes or an hour and just have some quiet time to yourself. Maybe you're into yoga and you do yoga. Maybe you meditate. Maybe you have aromatherapy. It works for you. Maybe you're a smoker. I mean, I'm not going to suggest take up smoking, but if you were already a smoker, probably smoking cigarettes is going to help you if you're already a smoker, or if you're a vapor. If alcohol helps you relax, then maybe drink a little bit, not too much, just a little bit, just to take the edge off. Whatever your strategy is, you have to learn how to relax before going into your game, because that will make it easier for you to improvise. It won't matter what your strategies are if you freeze up. There's another thing that's really important too, and that is really not caring about the session experience. I know that seems strange. You should care about it, right? You should care about how your session will come out. But actually, it's more freeing to just go in and have no expectations, okay, and really not be too concerned about the outcome or the experience itself. Now, the reason I say this is it might be a good game that you run, okay, or you might think it's a good game, or it might be a bad game. Now, it could be a good game for you and a bad game for the players. It might be a bad game for the players and a good game for you. You just don't know what combination you're going to get. It might be good for you and the players. It might be bad for you and the players. But ultimately, it doesn't matter in the grand scheme, because this is only one game session you're walking into. So when it comes to the experience over a long period of time, yes, you might care more about that. But it's actually more freeing to really not be too concerned about judging it yourself and allowing other people to judge it. If you can kind of essentially not give a shit, it will really help your ability to improvise and run a game. And I know that seems counterintuitive, but honestly, it's one of the best advice I've ever had, and it's worked really well for me over the years. Now, before I get into the other topics I was talking about, the different strategies and methods that I was talking about before, we need to go into the in-between-the-lines techniques. This is the alternative improvising methods. Now, whether you consider these to be bad methods or good methods, hence the teddy bear and somebody about to be spanked, I'm going to go through these. And again, like everything I do on my channel, these are tools. They're not good or bad. They are just simply tools. You decide when you use them and if they are for you or not. Okay. So yes and. You've probably heard this before, but what is that? This is when you, as the game master, take the player character's action or idea and you add something additional to the situation. So you accept what they're going to what they want to do or their idea into the game, and you add upon it. So yes and, but I'm going to add a bit more. It might be as simple as they want to jump onto a flying dragon, and you say yes, you can do that, and that dragon has a saddle on it, So you could sit down in the saddle, provided you get rid of the rider first. So maybe that's part of it, what you're doing there. But there's also yes, but. And yes, and yes, but are not good or bad as techniques. They simply have a purpose. So yes, but you take the player character's action or idea that they've put forward and you adjust it or change something related to the situation. Now, the reason for using yes, but is when maybe the players have decided to put too much into it and stack the deck too much in their own favor, or the effect on your adventure and your world is so significant that it would break down. So in other words, the players are having too much of an effect and you have to tone it down. So what you do is you take a part of that. So maybe the players say, look, I came from the village of Winkley Woo. And you say, look, I just don't like the idea of having a village called Winkley Woo. So fine, you change the name, but they still came from a village. You've just adjusted the name in some way. You've taken the rest of it, but the name got adjusted. So you're still saying yes, but you're making an adjustment, okay? And then the next one, which often I hear people say is something you should never use, and this is because they are probably inexperienced and they don't understand what it is in the first place, and that is no but. Now, there is a very specific purpose for no but, okay? And when we deal with no but, it's when the players have had or try to have such a significant effect on the adventure and what advantages they want to have their character have, or the world, that it's probably not going to work, okay? So here is what I'm saying. You don't accept the player character's action or idea into your adventure or game, but you will take a small element, significantly less than the yes but. It's not very much that's left because they've tried to impart way too much. And you still include it into the situation in some way, but it's a much smaller element. You could say that no but and yes but are essentially the same thing in many respects. They're just different ends of the scale. So an example of no but might be the player character says, I want to forge an all-powerful sword that has a +5 to hit on hitting and damage, and has all of these and lists off every single power you can imagine. I can cast 9th level spells, and it's just way too powerful for what you're dealing with. And you say no. But you can forge a magic weapon, but it will not be a +5. It will not be able to cast 9th level spells, okay? And it will not be able to do double criticals or some other peculiar thing. So these are the times where you're trying to, as a game master or dungeon master, incorporate things, but you adjust it down, okay? These are the hard tasks of a game master and dungeon master. Another thing that you can use is the random generator can be created in many different ways. And I'm really a huge fan of generators that you can use in your game that are really interesting. And so when I talk about these, I've used these before. So these aren't things that I haven't used, okay? I don't use things that I don't use. I would talk about stuff that I do. Here is the first one, and that is like blank 6-sided dice. Now they could be 6-sided dice, they could be 8-sided dice, I don't care. They're just dice, they're blank. And you can write an image, you can write a word on it, you can write a letter on it, you can do anything with it basically. And you use a Sharpie and you write whatever on there that you need, and you've just created a random generator that's 6-sided. It's like a small random generator for yourself. I've done this for random monsters, I've done this for weather, I've done this for, what else was the other thing? Oh gosh. I can't remember, but I've used it for many different things. It's just a small generator. You don't want to have too much going on here, okay? So that's one thing. It's not that difficult to find blank dice. You will be able to find them usually in a stationery store. Okay, the next one is NPC face cards or non-player character cards with an image on them. So Pathfinder put out a huge range of these things. And they're still a bit hard to find nowadays, but if you look around, you might find them. You can get a bunch of different things around this. Like this here is for sort of more dungeon monstery characters, whereas this one here is more for in the frozen lands. Or if I want high society, I would use something like this. Okay, these can be really useful. The other thing I would say is that if you can't find like a face card or a portrait card from any kind of other publisher, you can still usually find the NPC battle cards. Now, NPC battle cards are still published by Pathfinder or Paizo. Okay, I think Game Mastery, I think it is. But you can also, if you are a Magic the Gathering person, you'll probably have a lot of leftover cards. And Magic the Gathering has cards that have a portrait. They have a picture of somebody on there. You can use them as well. They can literally just use those cards, and that portrait is an indication of the image of an NPC that you've got in your game. You can also create your own portrait cards. You can go onto the internet, print off a whole lot of stuff, and make up some cards that you can just carry around, a little deck, put a bit of elastic around them, and away you go. I've done this years ago when I didn't have access to these things. I don't have them now, but you can certainly do something like that. You can also just grab a piece of paper. One of the easiest things is to simply grab a single piece of white paper and you brainstorm and you do association. And I've kind of shown people how to do this before, but essentially as you are running the game, you use this one piece of paper and you write down things that crop up. And you circle and connect the things that you want to put together, so that as the players are potentially interacting with your adventure and world and maybe taking it off in a direction you weren't expecting, it gives you an idea of what you have to build, and you do that on the paper as you go. Okay. Another way of sort of dealing with people going and doing something you weren't expecting and wanting to have something already prepared is you ask for a break. You ask for a break and you do the 5-minute map. And essentially what the 5-minute map is, you ask them to go have a toilet break, get some food, come back in 5 minutes, and you either go off somewhere else away from them so you've got some time to think and they're not distracting you, okay, or trying to look over your shoulder, and you just draw up a very simple map, 4 or 5 locations, maybe 6 if at the most, but I would suggest 5 is good enough. And then label it, and then you start filling in where you want to put monsters or creatures or an NPC, and you just do it in 5 minutes. It's as simple as that, and you can build most locations fairly quickly just using this method. I know 5 minutes doesn't sound like much, but I've done it before. I've shown people how to do it on my live streams. You can do this. There's also artificial intelligence services like ChatGPT and Midjourney, which really you can kind of you can get that to do the hard work when you're stuck. Like ChatGPT can write an adventure. It won't be a very good one. Like most generators don't make particularly good adventures, but it's not about that. It's about having something to help guide you. If you need structure, you can create structure. Midjourney will create images. If you need an image for an NPC, you can just plug that in and then press a button, and it usually takes a bit longer, but ChatGPT is pretty quick. So you can get around a lot of those problems. So those are a lot of the alternative methods I would suggest. Now, the tools that I use the most and that I continue to use a lot, I'm about to talk about. And these are the ones that I guess are at the top of my list in terms of viability, I guess. The Rory story cubes, or picture covered cubes or dice. Super helpful tool. I've used them for years. I don't regret ever using them. I always find them super helpful. So Rory story cubes is where you roll a few of these and use them to inspire a story idea quickly. It can be pretty much anything. I first saw these story cubes being used by Sly Flourish or Mike Shea to make non-player characters. Now he got the idea from the game inside Rory story cubes, where you actually roll up a character or a hero to include into the story you create with the cubes. So he got the idea from the game itself, and I think it's brilliant. The These six-sided dice are covered in different pictures that offer a lot of ideas, okay? If you're the sort of person who doesn't associate by word, but you need pictures to actually form ideas, this is a good place to go. Now, you need to practice. There's no point trying to just grab the cubes and away you go, because it's not going to work that way. You actually need to practice before you start applying it. So how do you go about practicing and applying it to your game session? First off, try playing the Rory Story Cube game with your family or friends before you use the story cubes in your tabletop role-playing game. So roll 9 Rory Story Cubes and then start with Once Upon a Time, and then each person takes it in turns to link one of the cubes into the story, and then you finish with the end. Okay? It's very basic. Okay, there's no wrong way to do it. Some stories will come out better than others, but that's not important. It's practice. You can even practice doing this before you start your game session, if you like, and then put it aside, and then later on, when you feel like you've got familiar with your group and how they operate and how you operate with the cubes, then apply it to your game. Now, Rory Story Cubes, you can buy the physical dice, or you can get a phone application or phone app and download it. It's not very expensive. There are knockoffs of Rory Story Cubes as well that you can get hold of as well, that are phone apps and the actual physical product as well. I would practice with your family playing Rory Story Cubes to improve your skills first. That's what I did. I still think the original Story Cubes box set is the best in my opinion. So there is alternatives, but I would go with the original. Now, a tool that you may or may not have heard of before, if you've been on my channel, you probably have for some length of time, is plot twist cards. Now, the problem with plot twist cards is they are a rare item now. They're very hard to find. But there are alternative things out there that are like them, that are called plot twist cards. They may not be made by Pathfinder or Paizo or Game Mastery, but somebody else has made a similar product. Plot twist cards offer usually a mechanical benefit for the Pathfinder game, but that's not the thing you're worried about. It also includes, these usually include a narrative suggestion or a number of different narrative suggestions, but an overall theme to the card, so that whoever's using the card is constrained in some way as to how it will be applied. Now, plot twist cards, you can give them out randomly to your players to use, okay, so that they can change aspects of the game's adventure plot, or events that take place, or locations, or monsters, or whatever it is. It's really to ensure your adventure does not get boring, and that it will force you to practice improvising. And I did this for years, and it certainly helped me learn how to improvise. This is not easy to do, I'll make that clear. Whether it's a campaign or adventure, it can come apart with player input almost immediately or later on. So you have to be very careful about how you do this. But my advice to you is always that even if you give them out as randomly to players, or you give it out as a reward for players to use later on, the Game Master does not have to accept the player's suggestion that they have used with their plot twist card. You can say no. It's all right. So what happens if you say no? Well, you can say, you can redraw a new card and I'll take that card from you. And the reason might be as simple as it would derail your adventure too much and you could not cope with the adjustments and it would generate too much work. That's fine. Or you can let them, just keep the card and they'll play it at a different time in a different way if they're really attached to that particular card, rather than drawing a new random card from the deck, whatever kind of deck you're using. But these are plot twist or plot cards, and you just got to be careful about how you apply it. If you take your time with them and you are discerning and you are not afraid to say no, but you'll be all right. If you're worried about saying no, but you're going to have some problems. Okay, next. Random charts and tables. Random charts and tables have been around for a very long time, like decades. So random charts and tables can be used to generate everything and anything for a game master. Doesn't matter what it is. There are online random tables and charts. Donjon, Donjon, the website, can create an entire dungeon location or adventure in seconds for multiple rule systems, not just 5e, okay, not just for AD&D. There's also Hexroll, that's Hexroll. That website can build a small section of a world, or essentially the entire world, and then also create multiple adventures for that world in about 1 minute. Like very fast, you would have everything you need to get going. That won't solve the problem of reading through it, but it will certainly create what you need fast. There's also Chartopia. It's a website, has many tables, random generators, plus you can create your own on this website, so you don't just have to use what's there. And it's been around a while, and so therefore it's got a lot of resources now. There's also Chartopia is Chartopia, and then D&D Speak, the website. That's D&D Speak. The website specializes in tables of 100 different things, and it's got pretty much a table for almost everything. I mean, there's a few things that might be missing, but you've got a lot of resources there. The problem with using any kind of random table and chart is the access point. I'm going to talk about that in a second. You will find many tables and charts that you can use that are random for Pathfinder, and the Pathfinder Game Mastery Guide, the Game Master's Book of Random Encounters has them, the Game Master's Book of Non-Player Characters has them, and then there's also Dungeon Master Guides, including the 5e one. But most of the Dungeon Master Guides have things like this in them. Then you have ChatGPT, which I've talked about before, or artificial intelligence writing websites can also generate tables and charts for you. They're not necessarily going to be perfect, but at least it can do it reasonably fast if you can't. Now, to use random tables and charts and have them work well, the best way for them to work well is if you organize them. So they have to be easy to access. So if you're going to use them digitally, they have to be organized in such a way that you can see everything that you need at a glance, click it on, and it goes to where you need to go. Okay, if it takes too long to find these things, you can't have them scattered all over the place. You have to pull it all into one place if you're going to go digital. If you like physical and you want it on paper, you need to have a folder with these tables in it that you can access. So it's probably a good idea to have a contents page or an index so you can rifle through very quickly and find exactly what you want when you need it. And it's not like you need to have 100 different random tables and charts. You can have a lot less than that. So that's the tables and charts. Next, plot points, which is sort of an expansion on the likes of the plot twist card and the plot card. But plot points are from the Dungeon Master Guide for Dungeons & Dragons 5e. It's on page 269 to 270. They actually have been around before this. They have been poached from other game systems and even older versions of D&D. Just maybe you just weren't aware of it, that's all. So this is where the players are given the ability to affect the campaign. They can affect the campaign, they can affect the adventure, anything about it. Maybe the plot, they can change the plot. They can change an NPC, they can create a completely new NPC. They can incorporate a monster, they can create a completely new monster during the game session. Now, the problem with this is it runs into the same issues as plot twist cards, but it's much worse because they're not constrained in any way by theme or the narrative on the card, because there is no card. It's just their imagination. This is much harder to do, significantly more difficult. And I would suggest if you haven't used plot twist cards or plot cards or storytelling cards first, you probably want to start there rather than going to plot points, unless of course you're very adventurous and you like to take risks. Okay, if you do, all good, go for it. Next, no game master or no game preparation. Now this will certainly force you to learn how to improvise, but it's probably the scariest and most stressful way to do it. Doing no game or adventure preparation forces a game master into improvising the role-playing game if they have nothing to refer to. If you've got nothing to refer to whatsoever, you've got to kind of make it all up on the fly as you go. Some of the best games I've ever played have been this way, much to my shock. It's not something I recommend to game masters who hate feeling stressed or who panic. I don't want you to panic or stress out. So if this is the sort of thing that would just be too much for you to deal with, don't do it. This method often is practiced by a game master or a dungeon master as really a result of having no time to plan for their game session, and maybe just, they don't want to cancel. And so they would still want to play the game with the players, but they just haven't had time to put it all together. And unfortunately, when you do no game preparation, sometimes players give you great feedback. This is frustrating for me, because if I do no game preparation and I'm told this is the best game I've ever run, I'm like, why am I doing all this preparation? But you can also yield really cruel player feedback, okay, when things don't go the way that they wanted it to go. When you seem like you're stumbling and you're unsure, or it just, even if you weren't stumbling and weren't unsure, but they just didn't like the flow of what you'd put together on the fly. So you've got to be careful about this no game preparation process. Okay, now that we've talked about the different methods, what can you improvise? Very important. Now I'm going to suggest to you that you can use story cubes, you can use any of these methods I've put forward to improvise the addition of every aspect or element of a tabletop role-playing game. Quite commonly, and probably the first one I ever talked about the first time I ran this, was the title of a book, often found on a bookcase or on a desk. When you say there's a set of books on the bookcase and you didn't name any of those books and your players want to know what the titles of the books are. So you could do that. That will allow you to do a lot of the work. Even the contents of the book. When the player decides they want to open the book, even though you gave them a title, and they want to read the book. It doesn't have to be a lot. You just need to get the gist across. So you can do something like this. This has happened to me more than a few times. The creation of a non-player character. Details like personality traits, bonds, ideals, flaws, motivation, very important. Maybe secrets. You can also quickly create an adventure hook for a side quest. Okay? You can randomly generate encounters, not just combat encounters where they fight something, but all sorts of different things. A lesser's contents that an NPC has presented as a clue to complete maybe the adventure goal. Runes found on an ancient castle or a temple or a tomb that unlocks a magical secret or some sort of other information. You can even create monsters from these various methods. You can develop travel locations for your party to see as they journey to a far-off place if you feel like that's going to be adding something to your game. You can even create official documents, journal entries, loot items and treasure, trinkets, magic items. There really isn't a limit. There's lots of different things you can put in here. And I would suggest to you that Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master may very well help you in that process. So if you've never used it before, maybe now is the time, okay? All right, next, lastly, miscellaneous recommendations. I always like to give out recommendations about improvising, and today I'm going to do the same thing. Please don't judge your own improvising skill and what you do strictly. Do not get too strict about it, as it's not always clear what players will enjoy, okay? Or even what you will enjoy. Improvising takes time to practice, before the game, during the game session, so don't expect to be very good at it without practice. You have to do it and fail lots to get better at doing things. That's the whole point of training and getting good at stuff, is you have to do it and fail and fail and fail and fail and fail until you stop failing and you feel like you're getting better at it. Okay? That's the whole point of learning. You have to have a failure point. Now, even if your players don't like you as a game master or a dungeon master improvising in your game and they want everything run as written in a pre-made adventure, that doesn't mean the player's feedback needs to have a lot of weight. on you as a game master. Certainly listen to it if you feel like, and I often have asked at the end of all my sessions, what feedback do you have for me? Because I hate to say it, but generally players don't always have particularly good feedback. Sometimes they will and sometimes they don't. Okay? Got to remember that players, when they're playing their characters, aren't very good at improvising and doing things with their character sometimes. Their ability to do stuff is not that impressive, frankly. It really isn't. Maybe they think it is. Maybe somebody else does think it is. But really, ultimately, they're only just making it up as they go as well. Okay? And if they're making it up as they go, you might have to do some making up stuff as well. And it's all got to interplay, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So please be careful when you get feedback feedback from players who have never been a game master or a dungeon master, and their feedback is really harsh. That doesn't mean ignore the feedback, but it does mean you need to realize that the weight of that feedback is not as important as maybe feedback from somebody else. Now, players don't necessarily understand how hard it is to improvise a tabletop role-playing game as a game master, okay? They generally don't understand that, particularly if they've never done it. And then the other thing to take into consideration is when you get a player at the table and they are a game master or a dungeon master or have done it before, and they give you feedback and they aren't complete dicks, okay? Dicks or bitches, then their feedback's probably going to be more useful to you, because generally game masters and dungeon masters are far more lenient on each other because they know what it's like. So the weight of their feedback is probably more important. That's what I would say to you when it comes to actually going up there and going through the process, the rigmaroles. You've got to do it the hard way, got to learn the hard way. Improvising is a thing. You can't escape it. It's going to come up eventually. So you might as well just get it done. So I'm hoping this was useful and helpful to you, and thank you for watching and listening. I want to thank all of my patrons who make it possible for me to run this program. And look, all the best. Please do not stress out. You'll be all right. Until next time, keep rolling those 20s. And I'm not gone. I'm here. Now, we're going to do a little bit of work today. And the work that I have in mind is... the work that I have in mind is we're going to go back to the beginning a little bit. For those of you who understand what that means, do you know when I was saying one of the first things I ever had to improvise was the title of a book? You know how they go and there's a bookcase. What's the title of that book? We started a document on homebrew book titles probably about 2 years ago, and we're going to build out that. I'm going to show you what I have because I found it. I never put it on Patreon, and it disappeared into the ether, and I found it. I'm going to show you today, and I think maybe we should build this out a little bit. I think we should do something with it. I feel like that has some value for today. So I'm going to do this, and I'm not going to make it long. We're going to do this fairly quickly, and I'm also going to do this in a different way, in that I'm going to roll some dice. I'm going to get you to use one of the methods I was talking about. And the one I like to use the most is the Rory Story Cubes. So I'm going to roll out some Rory Story Cubes on my desk. I'm going to point the camera at my desk, and hopefully you'll be able to see what's going on, and therefore you'll be able to make some decisions about what to do with those dice. And that's the plan for at least the next 20 minutes. Now, why am I keeping it so short? Because I have to go and read and assess a new book that is about to be released. Okay, you guys are probably aware of this new book that's being released. Okay, you're probably aware that it's very close to its launch, and so therefore I need to go and do, I guess, a read through. I offered to edit, I offered to assess, and so that's what I'm going to go and do. Okay, but not yet. So this is my task for you. Hello, Fred Huber, Pale Rider, and hopefully Nacho can be here as well. Here we go. So, hashtag, what is a good book title you can think of from the dice images? Now, you're only going to use 1 dice, 2 dice, 3 dice. Don't use all 9, okay? That's way too much. Okay, so keep it simple. Do not get silly about this sort of thing. And I'll take your ideas and I will plant them into the document so that you can see. Now, before I start showing you the dice, before I roll them out, let me show you this old document that literally has been sitting around for like ever that I had forgotten about. This happens to me sometimes. I do this. So, I believe there are 40 different book titles that we created. It's not a small number, but here we go. So this is it. We have the Fey Forest Songs, a catalogue of Fey songs. We have the songs of the Canopy Tower. I don't know what that's. Flutes of the Forest, the Florist and the Towering Wood, a Fey storybook, Psalms in Sylvan, prayer book in Elven. So what they've done, if you see this dash, this just tells you what this book is about. So what some people gave me a title, some people told me what the book was about as well. It depends how much you can deal with. You only have to give me a book title. That's fine. Okay. Musical parable, entrancing melodies, keeping fae and demons, a familiar's guide, the professional guide to trapping small folk, a fairy's guide. I think it's a fairies, something like that. The Fairy in a Gremlin Cage, a collection of fairy and gremlin fairy tales or fables. The Gnome Prince's Curse, an anthology of gnome fables. Local royal lineage, real events of royal dirty secrets and scandals. Zekroth's Guide to Chaos. The Deadliest Arrow, terrifying micro-analysis of linear time, blah, 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 blah. Does it ever stop? Okay, it keeps going on and on and on. Okay, keep going. A Spellcaster's Guide to Civic Beauty, interior design for public squares. No. Contemporary sundial maintenance and repair. How the Hand Stopped in the Name of Love. A hands-off approach to casual botany in hostile environments. The Happy Call of the Honeycomb, a self-help book. Keys, Rainbow Sheep, The Simple Joys of Farming, The Colourful Kiwi, it's probably because of, anyway. Do Sheep Go to Heaven, a novel about farmers doing nefarious deeds. Okay. The Simple Pain in the Neck, the Moonlight Flight of the Petals, Flight of the Night Blossom, Moonflower Tea and Herbal Levitation, Can't Cheat Time, a guide to cheating acquaintances and games of luck, Beach and Vermin, Shimmering Tales, the Lore of the Water Elemental Planes, Willow Bark, Space Barbel Fishies, I think that's right, Chaos, Wise Hand of Justice, Common Ticks of Liars, L for Law, a guide to always winning arguments in court, a book of common logical fallacies, Feeding and en masse, how the Egyptians fed the pyramids, okay, planting the seeds of knowledge. So there's a lot of stuff going on here, and I'm hoping that you will add to this list today. And I'm going to roll some dice in a second. And while I'm rolling dice, I'm sure that the rest of you will be wondering what the heck is going on. But that's not the issue. Here we go. I'm going to keep an eye on chat. I'm going to roll these dice every once in a while. And let's see what you come up with. Hopefully you can see these images. That is a bridge. That is a tower or a castle. That is a clock. That looks like a shadow. That looks like a sad face. That's a flower. That's an apple. That's a scale. That's a footprint. So don't use all the dice, okay? Pick just 1 or 2, maybe at the maximum 3. Okay? And then tell me what that title is. Put that title in and I will put it down. Now, I could be doing and practicing this myself, but I have the likes of Wizards and Warp Drives. He's quite capable of doing this. Fred Huber's going to be good at this. And I can see Thomas has already started. And I know Pale Rider will have no problem figuring this out. So the audience is actually going to show you how to do this. Okay? Right. You like the dice? Yeah. Well, every single dice is completely different. That's the best part about it. So the best book I improvised was How to Harvest Monsters. So that is our title. We'll take How to Harvest Monsters. My players still use it. Well, great. And that we want something like that. How to Harvest Monsters seems like a good title. I will add that to the list. How to Harvest Monsters. It's a very simple title, and I don't think we need to explain what that's all going on there. And then Fred Huber, not from the dice, creature name, biology and behaviors. Okay, so I'm just going to put here creature, biology and behaviors, okay? Again, probably a book that players would want to find with their character, more than likely. And the titles of these books, you might have noticed, tell you pretty much what's going on. So you don't have to worry about spending a lot of time figuring out how it's all going to work. Roll for the Turako. Hello, how are you? Joss C, hello. Thomas Grimble, hello, how are you? So Thomas has got here, Hedge Magic 101, A Wizard's Guide to Casting Cantrips. There we go. The title itself tells you pretty much everything you need to know. Okay? So we don't have to muck around with it. We don't have to do anything else with it. Hedge Magic 101. Nice and simple. And we've got a good idea of exactly what it does. Okay? So perfect. Nice job, Thomas. Now, Joss. Tasty treats. A druid's guide for foraging. Maybe two foraging. So we'll take Joss. I'll take your idea. You can say that my contribution today is reading out that big, huge ass list from a couple of years back. So I guess you're wondering, people, will Fred actually get around to making sure this goes up onto Patreon? Yes, I will. For those of you who are not on Patreon, you could just copy it down from the chat. I'm sure you will, if you want it. Okay. Guide to foraging. I think that's probably going to be a bit more grammatically correct. Okay, cool. I'm going to roll these again, people. So, yeah, 5 minutes, time to roll again. Here we go. So, we have a tall tower or a building. We have a scarab or maybe an insect or beetle. We have the bridge again, so I'm going to roll the bridge again. We got a book this time. Ha ha ha. We have a speech bubble. A rainbow and a cloud, maybe. A cane. A flower. I think we had a flower before. Here's a parachute. Here we go. We've got a magnet and a sad face. We had that before. We've got a star this time. So some different things. And we'll see what else you come up with. Tipping the scales. How to counterfeit coins and get away with it. Thomas. That is a long title. I think we can take just the first part of it and we'll be all right. I don't think we need to take the rather long. So I'm going to shorten it a little bit. Tipping the scales. How to counterfeit coins. That pretty much tells you everything. I mean, if you're going to counterfeit coins, you want to be able to get away with it as well. So I think that's a given. No point having a book that teaches you how to counterfeit coins if you can't get away with it. Correct? So we'll do that. And our next one. Ooh. No, Joss, you don't have to worry. I do this in these chats a lot, so I'm aware that some people will struggle. But if you're on your phone, it doesn't always do exactly what you want to anyway. If you're on your phone, you don't have all that control. Shadow dice. Title. The secret code describes symbols and makes thieves use. I'm a little unsure what I'm doing here, Pale Rider. I'm trying to get the idea. The language of the Underdark. Okay, so I think what I'm doing is... Okay. Oh, you're showing... Oh, the shadow... So the shadow is the dice you're using to get the idea from. I see what you're doing here. Okay, I understand more. Got it, Pale Rider. Got it. Okay, I'll break that down. Secret codes. Okay. Secret codes. Pardon me. I'm still a bit sick, so bear with me. Describe symbols and marks thieves use. Yes. Yep. Good. There's another title. Probably one of the reasons why I never finished this is when I started this process, people just had so many ideas. Probably couldn't keep up. I'm going to change the dice in 2 minutes, so grab whatever ideas you have from those dice, because I'm about to re-roll again. Okay? And language of the Underdark is being added. Language of the Underdark. And we've got an explanation as to what it is. A book on the dark elf, on dark elf sign language. Okay, I got it. Cool, got it. It's Pale Riders, and then Dark O'Clock. How the Underfolk pass the time. Okay, Thomas, I got that. Am I ready to roll the dice? I think I'm just about ready to roll the dice again. So we're going to keep rolling these dice and giving you something different to think about. So we've been doing this for about 10 minutes now. So we have a TP or a tent. We have a magic wand. We have a tower. I'm going to re-roll that. We've got a clock. I think we had a clock before. We've got an arrow this time. We've got an arrow pointing in many directions. We've got a foot. We used that before. The magnifying glass, don't think so. The torch, no. We'll re-roll this one. A pyramid this time. I got a house this time. A magnet, we've had that one. And we've got an L. Good Lord, what is that going to be? Who knows? So, as I said before, you pick 1 or 2 dice, maybe 3 at the most, but I would suggest 1 or 2, and that's what you build your book title around, okay? Don't get carried away and silly about what you're trying to do. You're not trying to include all 9 dice. That's just madness, okay? Even if you are using these to make NPCs, you wouldn't use too many dice. That would be foolish. So let me just take this one over, get that idea in, Dark O'Clock, and how the Underfolk pass the time. Okay, cool, nice job. Footprints of forgotten time. Okay, wizards and warp drives. Nacho, I've got yours. Okay. Now you're probably wondering, how useful is a huge list of book titles or names? I don't know. It depends on how you feel about it. Remember, you can go through that list and use up those books as you run adventures. Every time they come to a bookshelf or a title of a book that you need to deal with, it's like having a list of names for NPCs. Book titles is kind of like that. The Star Tower. Okay. We got that from Wizards and Warp Drives. When Featherfall fails. Subtle Magic Mayhem. Okay, let's do that. We've got that, Fred. And then that. Okay. I'm going to give you just 2-3 minutes left, and then I'm going to stop. And I'm going to go back, and I'll show you what I've put in. And this time I will actually update it and get it all in there, okay? Because I didn't, obviously, first time I did this, I'll make sure I actually put it up on the Patreon. Oh dear. Anyway, next. Parachute dice. The title is Air Contraptions. Describes how to make hand gliders, balloons, and such. Okay. Cool. How to attract bugs. Really? Contraptions. Describes how to make hand gliders, balloons, and describe flying devices. Okay. Okay, that's it. I got that one. Next, am I out of time? No, 2 more minutes to go. How to attract bugs. I seem to be pretty good at doing that myself right now. And how to attract bugs is in. How to attract bugs. I think I was watching The Bug's Life. Was I watching The Bug's Life last night on TV? And yeah, funny movie. Manual of the Stars, Navigational Star Charts. Yes. Calrel, hello, how are you? So Wizards and Warp Drives is a patron, so is Fred Huber. If I hadn't pointed that out, I should have. Okay, let's see. We're doing pretty well. And I think we are just about at the end, and it is time for us to wrap it up in terms of creating titles for books. So when you make a list of titles of books, treat it like a list of names for NPCs. It's a list you go through and you just cross off as you use them up. That would be my advice to you. Yeah? Oh dear. All right. So there we are. So one example of how you can go about using your Rory story cubes or a generating device. I'm a visual person, so I always find story cubes more useful than other methods. But you don't have to use that method in any way whatsoever. You can use whatever method will work for you. Okay. So let me enter this poll. And those of you who have put in titles already, I will take them down in a second after the live stream. So, is improvising as a dungeon master for your tabletop role-playing game scary? No, 68%. Yes, 31%. Undecided, okay, 16 votes. So, there's obviously a portion of people who are still scared by the prospect. I know I have a lot of people in here who tend to be very experienced, but I know that not all of you are, so hopefully that will help. Okay. So I've got to go and read through and do some checking of a book. To do that, I need to finish early today rather than spend too much time. And as you might have noticed, my voice is almost gone, and I've been talking almost the whole time. And I'm about to lose my voice, so I got to stop. I will be back tomorrow. What am I doing tomorrow? Oh, the Kraken. For those of you who've had enough and don't like the Kraken in Dungeons and Dragons 5e, I'm going to redo it. I've used that Kraken so many times, and I had a laugh because during Kraken Week, Trent Monk Chris had actually done a rebuild of the stat block. I had to laugh because I was listening to what he was saying, and I was thinking, those are all the things I would do or have already done. And so, yeah, I don't know how useful that is going to be. The difference is that I would say I'm probably a little bit more ruthless than Chris because I've used the Kraken so many times, and because I was part of the alpha playtest for the Monster Manual, and I've been playtesting that Sodding Kraken for about 10 years now. I've got a pretty good idea of where it needs to go. So mine will probably be a little bit harder to deal with. Anyway, that's not beside the point. I will be back tomorrow, but huge thank you to everybody who's been watching and listening. Thank you if you took part in the poll. I do appreciate it. I want to thank all of my patrons, because without my patrons, this just is not possible. And I really want to thank all of you who've been providing ideas and comments, because your ideas are what drive the live streams. Without them, they're kind of like a waste of time, right? So thank you so much. So wherever you are in the world, whether it be the morning, the afternoon, or the night, please look after yourself, your family, and your friends. Be nice to your neighbours. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s.